Hit record. Share
So
my
we have to tell you
screen.
guys, we are a little disconnected because our third party has left the country again. Emma is out on vacation. She's headed across the pond. So anytime she's not here and we have to run things by ourselves. Katie, we can see oh, there we go.
Yeah. Perfect.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't.
Yeah. So, okay. Very
Yay.
good. Well, I love this topic today because it is building strong teams. And just trying to shift my screen so I can okay, well, whatever. Not gonna let it bother me. So building strong teams, and for anyone who's attended these before, I can't go too far into the slides without shouting out Patrick Lencioni. So if you're playing the Patrick Lencioni drinking game, feel free to either take a drink or make a tick mark for later for your drink. So but I love this quote from him, which is building a strong team is both possible and remarkably simple, but painfully difficult. And I think that is just the perfect quote as we start to talk about, the importance of building strong teams and how we do it. It really is such a simple concept. What makes it challenging is we have all kinds of different people and personalities and working genius styles and different agendas, which we're going to talk about today. So when we talk about the importance of building strong teams, we have to first talk about organizational silos. So I know a lot of you are driving or not walking or playing golf or doing whatever. So I typically would have people nod or raise their hands or whatever here. But if you can put in chat, if it's safe for you to put in chat, I'm just wondering how many of you are familiar with the term silos? Patrick Lencioni has a great book called Silos, Politics, and Turf Wars. But silos is not a new term. It's just one that I find kind of is hit or miss whether people have heard it before. So a silo, it forms when leaders and really the employees are allowed to develop loyalty to their specific group or team rather than to their employer and the company as a whole. And so we're going to talk a lot about how we break down silos, how we recognize silos, how we build up trust between departments to make sure that we're really working together for that greater good. So Jenna, I can't see chat. Did anyone get a chance to drop anything in there?
No. So girls, you can always unmute too. I know lots of you are driving. You can just say me.
Me.
Yep. There's at least one from Jennifer.
So it's really important that we start with recognizing silos. And so we're going to give you a couple different ways to recognize silos. So the first one is individual mentality. Silos form when individual teams or departments really lose sight over the overall mission and they're really just focused on their goals. So they really lose focus on the overall company goals. And we're going to talk about at the very end how you create a really strong group rallying cry to make sure that you're all focused on the same goals. Another way to recognize silos is misaligned priorities. It might not just be mentality, but it could be that, you got competing priorities between departments. People are actually either pulling against each other in opposite directions or just this friction is going on. And so your priorities, even just in your departments, are very, very different.
Katie, you want to make me a co-host real quick?
I'm sorry?
You're gonna make me a co-host real quick?
Sure. I'm gonna stop sharing so I can get back in and see this.
Oh, sorry.
You're good. You're good. There you go. Now you got some control.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay. So, talking about competing resources. So we talked about, oh, I'm sorry, we did not talk about that. Let me get refocused. Little ADHD kicking in. All good. So scroll. Um, so competing for resources, and we see this especially in the times when budgets are not as fruitful as they used to be, or we're getting resources, people are being cut and opportunities are being cut. We will see a lot of times departments are just fighting against each other for um, paper clips and paper. And that sounds absurd, but I know Jenna and I have both worked at places where I mean, it was literally like fight to the death to have just the basic resources to do your job. And it's really hard to look at the bigger picture when you're fighting for just the basic things that you need to do your job. And then communication issues. Silos tend to form when there's no clear communication channels, especially as we embrace whether it be 100% work from home or work from alternate locations, or when we're hybrid. If we're not having clear channels of communication, if we're not having a unified hub of where we share information and where we're speaking similar language and having similar shared ideas, absolutely silos can very easily form, especially if we're not all in the same location at the same time. We definitely can create more deeper bonds with our individual teammates that we see on a regular basis. And then having specialized knowledge and language. So no matter what type of work you do, we all have different types of language. And the IT may speak IT speak, and we're technical, where accounting may have their speak, and HR has their speak. And so we've really got to make sure that we're paying attention to specialized knowledge and specialized language, so we're not losing the ability to engage with each other in strategic conversations, that we're understanding each other's viewpoints, and really even just speaking up when we don't understand. I know a lot of times we'll see people will be sitting in meetings with leaders from other departments, and we don't want to look like we don't know what we're doing, or so imposter syndrome kicks in. So instead of asking a question of, what does that mean? Should I know that? We just don't speak up. And then when we're going back to try to explain it to our teams, we don't even have clear understanding of maybe what was happening, or we might feel overwhelmed because we didn't understand. And so we might not share something that might be beneficial for our teams to have. And then really, it all ends with poor leadership. If we don't have strong leadership, if we don't have strong leaders that see the value of breaking down silos, then really it's just going to be this us versus them mentality. It's going to be this push pull. So poor leadership practice really can lead to bad behaviors because they're modeling those silos that are being created. So what do silos cost us? At the end of the day, a lot of money. Silos cost us a lot of money. It also is decreased innovation and creativity because we're not bringing in new ideas. We're staying in our department, so might not be getting outside feedback. We might spend too much time wasted looking for solutions when the solutions are inside our organization. We're just not tapping into them. I see a lot of times where a organization will go and hire an outside consultant to do work that you actually have internal teams that can do. And so you're paying someone to do, voiceover work when you actually have someone in-house that can do voiceover work. Or you're paying someone to do some training on a very specialized topic when there's someone internally that could very easily have done it for you. It can lead to poor decision making because we don't have all of the knowledge, and really disengaged employees. When we don't have deep relationships at work, it can lead to retention issues and happiness at work. So, ways to break down silos. First of all, we have to recognize it, define it as a problem. We've got to acknowledge that we have the problem. We need to make sure we're communicating a shared vision, that everyone understands and knows why this is really important and why we're doing the work. Setting those common goals, I'm going to give you a tool at the end on how you can do that. Find ways to bring teams and departments together, whether it is you're all in the same town, but working more hybrid, or all work from alternate location, or if you're all across the US, or even international. There's ways that you can build relationships across teams. When I worked for a large IT company where we had departments all across the world, we would do this where once a quarter you would almost like, I'm going to date myself, old school pen pals, where you would kind of adopt. I know, Jenna, you can laugh at me because you're young, I'm old. um, but you adopt a different department, and so you don't have to spend a whole lot of time, but you may do things, especially if you're in separate locations. You may send kind of just a goodie box of regional goodies to, say, you have a team in Phoenix. So if you're here in Kansas City, you may send them some goodies out to Phoenix. And then you might do kind of a lunchtime, or, mid-afternoon, mid-morning, depending on where they are, kind of group meeting where you're just trying to get to know each other, and you may just share. So it's really just a relationship building. It's not getting work done, but it's building those relationships, because we know that as we build deeper relationships, it's easier to work together. So that's really important. Fostering psychological safety, which we're going to talk about in a future session, but this is really important. Having that safety to be able to speak up at a meeting and say, I don't understand what you're talking about. I don't know the language you're speaking.
Spoiler alert, psychological safety is the foundation of everything. Everything. So
Yeah.
if it's something that you're like, I don't know how to do that one, join us for that one, because it's a big one. And you can't have any of the other great leadership skills for a team without that one. So
Yeah. So true. So true. Stop touching my screen. Um, encourage open communication and idea sharing. Ensure effective communication. Make sure that you are talking to each other and not across each other. This is another thing I see a lot of times when silos are formed. Everyone thinks they're rowing in the same direction, and they're really not. They're either talking across each other, or they're talking in completely different directions. And so making sure that you have effective and open communication styles. Inspire teams to ask questions. As leaders, it's important for us to ask questions so people know it's safe for them to ask questions. Also, find times to welcome questions. It amazes me that organizations still have like these old school comment boxes, or these like anonymous email lines or phone lines, and people don't use them. I know in some organizations they do, but very, 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 very often those just remain empty. And so we need to make sure that we make it safe enough for people to ask questions out loud, or for them to be able to go to leaders and ask questions, because we're just finding those kind of old school ways are still not effective. We need to make sure we get all the leaders on board. So the leaders really need to understand the importance of shared vision and not having silos. Implementing effective coaching and training. I really feel the collaborative tools, we're getting better at that through COVID, whether it's teams or however you're communicating with each other, but finding ways to really collaborate with each other, and then finding ways to create a sense of connection. So we love this. It's Patrick Lencioni, and it's really a way to create a rallying cry. So as an organization, we need to make sure that we're all going in the same direction. And so we do this at Catalyst. We've done this in our previous lives. What is our overall thematic goal? What is that one rallying cry as an organization that we are going towards? And so, for ours, it is to provide meaningful leadership skills to all. So, not the why you should be a leader, but how you actually be a leader. So, that is our thematic goal at Catalyst. And then those defining objectives. What does that look like? How are we doing that? How are we getting it done? So we're getting it done by multiple different ways. So we'll take down that thematic goal down to defining objectives. And then you take it down to even that operating objective. So how are you doing it ongoing day to day? What are the practices that you're doing each day? And when we're working with clients, what we'll tell them is the organization, so the executive team, the leadership team, the whoever is kind of your guiding principles, they should create this thematic goal for the whole organization. And then what we find our clients like to do is then by department, they will then create their thematic goal that stretches up to the overarching thematic goal. So one of our really amazing clients, the City of Lenexa, they have their big Vision 2024. So what they're working on, actually, I think it's 2040 now, isn't it, Jenna? Sorry. So their 2040 vision. And so then each department has these thematic goals that go directly to their 2040 strategic plan. And then they have their defining objectives and they have their operating procedures. So everybody throughout the whole city knows where they're headed in 2040 and how they're going to get there. So it's really that roadmap for them that is really cool.
Yeah. And the one thing that I think City of Lenexa does really well, and other organizations do this well, but for your guys' information, is making sure that that thematic goal is visible, right? Like a lot of the times companies will create this great idea and then there's kind of a vision statement, right? But it gets hidden on the website and 3 pages back and nobody really knows what it is. And so for City of Lenexa, they make sure that I think their overarching goal is to be the best place to live, work, and play or something like that, right? And then all their defining objectives, like their 2040 goal technically can be a thematic goal, but it's a defining objective. So for 2040, here's the things they're doing. And then here's the things that go into it. And everybody knows where that step is happening and where they are in the process. They do a great job of making it visual for everybody.
Yeah, they really do. So that is a really quick. So I kept it under 30 minutes. Look at me.
Look at you go.
I know let's go back to the original quote. Because it really is, it's possible and simple, but can be painfully different or difficult. So really paying attention to that, paying attention to, where are the fractures in your organization, where are your fractures among teams, and how you can build those. And I will say, if you notice 2 teams really fighting against each other, those are the perfect teams to match up first. Because going back to the very first one we did, which was having difficult conversations, a lot of times it's not that we have competing agendas, it's that we don't realize how we're working past each other. So the more we can align each other and bring each other together, the better it's going to be for our organization. So
yeah, I have some little extra points, but any questions, ladies, you want to get out before I start rambling about something? No, everybody's driving.
Guys, I have a request for some advice. This is Lori. Jenna, you and I had a nice conversation last night after golf. It was lovely to meet you. And I just want to thank both of you for these sessions. I think they're really interesting and useful and helpful. And so thank you. Absolutely. So here's my question. So I am the leader of a team, and to some extent, I am the person who really is supposed to make sure that those silos aren't happening. So I'm a banker. I work for a very, very large bank. We're a global bank, and we have 200,000 people. So a lot of the things that you say my company actually does very, very well. But again, I am supposed to be the person that assures that we don't have silos. So in service of that, one thing that I do is I have a team meeting once a month, and I work with 2 credit teams, which is 4 or more people, depending. I sometimes it's more than 2 credit teams. I work with 2 treasury teams, and all of those people are here in Kansas City. And then a lot of times I have other partners around the country. So I have to say, I like dread these meetings. I mean, I just dread them. And
I
I
get it.
hate to have it just be like a checklist where we go over what's going on with every client or every prospect or whatever. And I'm just wondering if you guys have any thoughts about how I can make those better, because I'm not doing a very good job. I don't know that I'm doing that good of a job, really. And all of these people have different bosses than me, right? So all of my partners have a different boss than me. So we are sort of siloed. But
Yeah.
having said that, we're also very collaborative and everybody likes each other, and it works really well. So I don't think we have a huge problem, but I should probably be doing better.
But it sounds like you're trying to be proactive, which we love, instead of reactive. So kudos to you for being proactive.
I love that question, Lori, because if you are driving or whatever, you probably didn't see that I turned around to my handy dandy bookshelf. But Patrick Lencioni has a really great book called Death by Meetings, and that's where the rallying cry comes from. But he also has some great resources. So when I share the presentation, I will also share that, because it's even how you set up the meetings. So you make them less checklist and more like interactive. So you send all the things that are kind of those checklist things off prior to the meeting for people to review. And then what you do during the meetings is you really bring those discussion questions. So, if you don't have a lot of discussion points, then that may be the time where you all do some brainstorming or relationship building or some things like that, to where it's not just those like waste of time, check. Okay, move on. And then people walk out and are like, oh, we totally could have done that by an email, but we can't trust everyone to read their emails. So we have to meet in person because so yeah, Lori, I will share some resources, because meetings should really be fun if you do them correctly. Of course, I'm a galvanizer too. When you get to Working Genius, I'm a galvanizer. So I love a good meeting. They make me so happy. And then to see meetings run really, really well and really effective, they can be really powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I used to run a company, and I had board meetings, right? I had a board, and I would, when I did that, but these were, fairly powerful people, CEOs of companies, et cetera. And I would have a speaker every time, or a topic or a theme for every meeting. But boy, it was a lot of work to do that. And I just don't know that I have time to do that every single month. And we really do have to. One of the things that we do is I try to create action items so that everybody kind of has a list, and they can, I send it out a few days before so everybody can kind of look at it. And if you didn't do it yet, you can get it done. So at least we have some, I need to have something come out of it that's useful too. And people seem to like the action item, thing. So I don't know, but I know that they're not fun. I don't know. I don't think my meetings are fun. I need to make them more fun. How do I make it more fun?
Lori, I think the biggest thing about silos is that what happens is, and to keep them from forming, is understanding what people are doing. And I think that's where silos get formed the most often, is like especially when we work with bigger partners, we see like marketing has zero idea what finance is doing, right? And so
Yes.
for one of the groups that we used to actually in our old organization, we would see that like finance was trying their darndest, but people weren't doing the correct processes because finance hadn't outlined the correct processes for everybody. And so they ended up bogged down. And so for me, one of the easiest things was to sit down and ask the department lead, like, hey, what's going really well for your department right now? What's stopping you and making it hard to do your job? And what can other departments do to make it easier on you? Because that helps to alleviate, get rid of some of that like friction of like, God, nobody even knows what we do over here. Nobody cares about how hard our job is. And that's where people get the most frustrated. And then they just bog down and get into their little silos even more.
Mm-hmm. That is a great insight. Yeah, again, my company is so large. Like we're super security conscious. So we all have access to different systems because we have to be, if you don't have a need to have it, you don't have it. So sometimes we actually all have different pieces of information sometimes to solve the same problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that could be a really good place for you to start. What's going well? What's making it hard for your team to do their job right now? And is there anything that other teams can do to help make your job easier? And
So interesting.
When you ask those questions, the supervisor and your team will have to actually have those questions with their teams first so that they can understand, you've got to get to the waitresses, right? If you're having problems getting food out, Katie always tells the story because there's a computer issue that's not printing. Well, fix the printer, not doing a, training for everybody on a community or a customer service. You got to figure out what the whole thing is in the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And I will say too, depending on your people, a lot of people hate icebreakers and games and stuff like that. So, I was just with a bunch of college students and they had icebreakers and they're all like, oh, please, no, I don't want to do this. So, when I think about how to make things more fun, like I tend to shy away from some of those, but even just to make people more human, we will do things like, what's your leadership superpower? And Jenna, what is that really stupid question that you guys used as an icebreaker that everyone loved?
How do you eat an Oreo? We did this group and we did it with the NAIA first. And so it was with college kids. And let me tell you, the arguments that went through it's hilarious because you're like, oh no, you have to do it this way. Somebody said that they took the cream out of the middle and got rid of it and only ate the cookies and everybody lost their mind. Like, what? So it's just fun little stuff like that. And the other one that Katie, we've had another person do, actually, it was Jim at the City of Lenexa.
Yeah.
He sat down with us one day and asked, what's on your mind right now? And he was like, I don't need it to be about what we're going to meet about. He was just trying to understand where all of our brains were at that exact moment. Because if my brain is on, oh, I have a kid to go pick up, or my kid is sick at home, I'm not going to be in the meeting. And until that gets out of my mind, I'm not going to be present anyway. So that was another really good one.
Yeah. And Lori, I will say, for me, when I lead team meetings is I don't bear all the responsibility of it. And so I will, even what I used to do when I worked in higher ed with the faculty is I would say, okay, we're going to have a 5-minute learning session or a 10-minute learning session. Who's reading something interesting? Who's listened to an interesting podcast? Who has something that they want to share at the first 5 minutes of our session? Who went to a conference that picked up something? And so then that way you pass off the responsibility, so you're not always being the one that has to bring new stuff. And also it empowers them to kind of take control and set the tone of the meeting as well. So that may be one way for you to take some responsibility off yourself
and still make it fun.
Yeah, and make it fun.
I love it. Great idea.
We definitely love those ones, like what's your leadership superpower? And if you guys have never heard us talk about that one, we do it all the time. But your leadership superpower is, so if we're sitting in a team meeting, we go around and I say what I think my superpower is. But then the team will then say what they think my superpower is. And it's really eye-opening and it makes everybody feel good because people will say things that you're like, oh, I didn't know that I did that well, right? And so it kind of gives everybody kind of the feels, and then everybody's like, oh, okay, we can start the meeting now, I'll be happy. Instead of just being like, oh, why am I here? Yeah. So
great questions, Lori. I love it. I will make sure to send you some resources as well. So Jill?
Katie, how do we get out of the acronym bucket? Everybody speaks in acronyms, and you had said before, that go ahead and speak up and ask. But I've been to so many meetings with clients, and everything's an acronym, and I'm like, okay, what does that mean? I have no idea what that stands for.
Oh, yeah. As someone who's recovering from working with the military, I mean, all of the DoD, the Department of Defense. Yeah, see, I'm about to use it too. All the Department of Defense, all that. I mean, it's all acronyms all the time. And then so there's a couple ways to do it. If we are working with a client and they all understand their speak and we don't, what I will do is I will make notes, and then afterwards I'll sit with my contact and say, one, can you help me understand your acronyms? Two, as an HR person, I will also ask the question. It's so funny you asked that, because I literally posted something on LinkedIn today about onboarding. I will ask them if they have an acronym document that they use, because for new hires, as you're onboarding people, you want to make sure that you're onboarding them into their speak. So I will also ask for, can you provide me with, kind of your acronym list so I can have it available to me. And then if they don't have it, they probably should create it. So that's another way to help break down silos, is to have each department kind of make their own acronym dictionary. So then you can share it across departments to say, when we're talking about, XYZ, this is what we mean, and here's how it impacts our team. And so really creating that dictionary, one, it helps for that cross-functional relationships, but then it also just helps as you're building your onboarding programming to make sure people don't come in and have acronym soup.
Thank you. I like that. For me, and it's our organization uses a lot of them. And so what I try to do is say what the full name of the organization is, or the full name of what, I'm talking about, let's just say, and then just say, we're known as, blank, 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 blank. So just to put it defined. But I was at a program last week, and I just felt like everywhere I went, there were these acronyms, and I'm like, okay, raising my hand, what does that mean? And I know I wasn't the only one, so I'm definitely one of those people that I'll ask, because I don't want to be ignorant with what someone's saying as they continue to use it, because then I lose interest in the conversation.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some introverts or some people that are quieter in the room that are like, oh, thank goodness she asked the question.
Exactly. Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you all for showing up and for your questions and everything else. We will share the presentation. I'll also share some of the resources from Death by Meeting. And then we will see you all in 2 weeks, where our topic is going to be, the suspense, let me pull it up. Our topic in 2 weeks is going to be, this is going to be a good one. Focus and Productivity by Emma. Yeah, so that's going to be a really, really great one. So everyone, have a awesome 4th of July. Be safe, have so much fun, and we will see you guys in a couple weeks, if not before, on the golf course.
Thanks,
Thanks, buddy.
ladies.
Thanks, ladies. That was great.
Bye, everyone.
And recording.